Hey y'all.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode
of Smith and Waker. I'm Molly. Wait a minute. Rewind. We're going to do this one more time. Are you ready? Ready?
Do it over 1, 2, 3.
Hey y'all. I'm Molly.
And I'm Monica. And welcome to the second episode of
Smith and Waker,
where we are going to talk more about women
who ride
and have fun.
Absolutely.
All right. So what are we doing today?
Well, we got that on the second time this time. High five.
High five.
Woohoo. Okay. So.
Not as funny, but we're getting the hang of this.
Yeah, we are. Give us a time and we'll, we won't be making you laugh as much anymore. Just kidding. What are we going to talk about today? Notable women who have paved the way for us to do what we do.
Tons of them. Tons and tons.
Stats, how we've grown. What we ride statistically as women, and some celebrities that ride.
Yeah, and
that you may not know about.
And then we'll give you a little preview into what's coming next.
Yeah,
because that's stuff coming next.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah. So, what do you got for stats?
So, well, for stats, let's start with stats. So, you'll probably see us shuffling papers around and turning pages because we took as many notes as we can.
Mm-hmm.
I would say maybe a disclaimer about all of this is we've done as much research as we can. We've found sometimes numbers differ a little bit from year to year. Mm-hmm. We're going to tell you what we know, or at least what we're finding. We'll cite our areas where we can, and then we will. And then we encourage you to go and look some of this up yourself too, because we're not going to have enough time to do all of it.
Oh no.
But we're going to give you a little preview into what we know.
And I squirreled so hard whenever I was researching some of the notable women and influencers from the past that, what I say paved the way for us to do what we do. And we're just not going to be able to cover all of them. There were so many. And it was so exciting just to see how they all accomplish what they accomplish and how they've all left their mark, and it was inspiring and empowering, and I wanted to talk about all of them, but Monica reminded me that we're trying to keep this around 30 minutes.
And some of it was kind of disheartening.
Some of it was very disheartening.
Like to think that not really in the big scheme of things that long ago, women were still treated differently because we were women, but we've come quite a ways.
Yeah.
So
but
still
we'll
got
get
a ways
to
to go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where did we start, Molly? So I think we
were talking about ownership and how ownership was climbing with women who ride.
Yeah. So let's see. What I found was that about 20% of the women of motorcycles that are owned by women, which we talked a little bit about this when we were prepping for our podcast here, but I wonder how different ownership is compared to ridership.
Right.
So one of the stats that I read in here talked about that ridership could be as high as 25%, but ownership is around 20%. And then you start to wonder how many, potentially men that have women, their women's names on their bike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
and how is that ownership determined? Like, is it husband and wife or partners that own their bike together? Or
right.
So keep all that in mind whenever we're given these stats. I know we tend to, we're women, we overthink things sometimes.
Totally.
It's what we do. So
cool. So let's see. I am a little disorganized here. I apologize. This is the page I wanted. So what I found that was fascinating was when we start to take a look at things like the breakdown of what women ride.
What women ride, that was interesting.
I thought that was kind of cool. So what?
and we have 2 wheels.
Yeah.
I would be interested to know how many women ride 2 wheels versus 3 wheels.
And I think we'll start to see more of that come out as time goes on. I think that there are people out there who still, and maybe even just with the dates of the times that we pulled these reports, maybe they weren't necessarily counting 3 wheels as a motorcycle.
Right.
At that point, there's always been, everybody gets a little
debate
freaked out about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that even comes into play when we talk about scooters. But but with regards to kind of what the breakdown was, at least back when this data that we got from a website called bikerlawyer.com that they have tons of stats out there, period. And this is not an advertisement for them. We just are citing where we got our information. It says 34% of riders are cruisers, women riders are cruisers. 33% are on scooters, and 10% are on sport bikes, which I thought was interesting. They did point out in here that they said before you smirk at a scooter.
No.
And we've talked about this in our last episode.
Yeah, smirker.
Smirker. the scooters could be as high as 850 cc's. So for some of us, that's bigger than the bikes that we ride.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind as you go through this. The one piece that I thought was super interesting was that 49% of the women like to work on their own bikes.
I have no desire to work on my own bike. However, I commend all of you strong women that do.
Oh, totally. I think that is so cool. I can do little stuff, but like I mentioned to Molly earlier, I work really hard so that I can pay somebody else to take care of it for me because I don't want to have to worry about it.
No, I'm not a wrencher. I have this closet dream that maybe it would be fun to build a rat rod or something. Yeah. Is that a technical term in the bike world? I know rat rod is.
I have not heard it that it's a technical term, but I've heard the term. Period.
Yeah.
Rat bikes all the time.
Rat bikes, yes, and then that would be fun. But then that would take away my time from riding. So, but the sense of accomplishment whenever a woman builds and works on her own bike is astounding, and that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I just swapped out some lights on my bike, and I thought it was the shit. So.
Yeah, exactly. You are the shit for doing that. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, on that note, I will say I admittedly went down this path about an amazing woman named Paris Mcgowan, who was probably most recently in the news about being the first African American to be Harley-Davidson certified and be a mechanic. And I was excited and interested to know that there were 2 African American women that came before her.
Yes.
Alicia Healy, I think, was one of the women's names.
Alicia Healy. Actually, she's a master tech at Rubber City in Ohio, and she has been a master tech for 9 years, is what I was able to research. We have some pictures up here for you as we go through. Yeah. And she was actually featured in one of the HD Enthusiast magazines, I do believe, or maybe it was a mechanics magazine.
That's cool.
Yeah, so there were a few other women, and then Selena, I'm going to butcher her last name, Terrazas, was another young lady that was also a master mechanic, and she became a master mechanic in 2017, and she went through the MMI in Phoenix, and she's in HD of Santa Clarita. So kudos to all 3 of those women. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
In fact, I think you and I talked about one time we should maybe ride to one of them and introduce ourselves, because it would just be fun and just gives us another place to ride.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Santa Clarita sounds fun. Ohio's not that far.
Nope. Ohio's not far at all.
We could go give Alicia Healy a big hello.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. What other stats do I have? I have
growth.
Tell me what I had about growth.
In 1998, the ownership amongst women, now remember, ownership versus ridership is going to be a little skewed,
about that.
Was 8%. In 2013, we had grown to 14%, and now in 2020, they estimate ownership at 20%. However, they say that's skewed, and that women ridership is actually more in line with 25%.
Yep, exactly. I think we mentioned that at the opening of this as well. And I think it'd be fun to, maybe we'll have to do some little impromptu surveys. I think, if you don't, you should search. If you're a Facebook user, you should search for Facebook, find some lady rider pages out there to join. There's tons of information to be found. Specifically, you should follow us.
Yeah.
And we'll put the link on the screen here for you.
Yeah. If you're not in Minnesota, that's fine. But
we'll find you stuff.
Yeah, we'll find you stuff.
But we should maybe do a little survey out there and see what those results turn out for us. A little less
ownership
scientific.
Versus ridership.
Yeah.
3 wheels versus 2 wheels.
Yeah.
And then we'll report back on that. Definitely.
One of the other facts that I found was around female riding and safety. So this talk about women tend to be safer riders, and I'm thinking you probably are all looking at us right now and going, duh. But
we're mothers, most of us, some of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says, and this is based on, again, the same website that I mentioned earlier, and specifically coming out of the MIC survey data, and I'll put what MIC stands for down below here. But it shows that 60% of or more of women took certified motorcycle safety courses, as compared to only 42% of men.
I wonder too if we were to break that down by age.
Oh yeah,
men,
that would be
because
interesting.
you know, we did that class this summer,
Mhm.
and there was a young man in the class with his grandfather.
Yeah,
and
that was
the
fun.
grandfather took it because his grandson wanted to. So I wonder if you broke that down by age, if it's the older gentlemen who ride. I'm stereotyping.
It's all right.
That would be less likely to take a class as a younger person.
And I think, again, I encourage you guys to go out and look at stats yourself,
Mhm.
but you'll find that they, excuse me, they do a lot of that breaking down by baby boomers versus millennials versus, Gen X versus Gen Y and all of that. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that here. I'm not going to go deep into, all the breakdown, but it is, excuse me again, it is interesting that millennials have a pretty large impact on what's going on in the riding area right now. Go ahead and talk for a minute. I'm going to take a drink.
She's taking a drink of her drink right now so that her throat isn't scritchy. She's got all the facts right now that we're going to go over, so I'm just filling air.
All right. Let's see. One more clearing of the throat, and I think I'm good. So in some states, the survey found that women make up 30% of the student safety population. So lots of women out there taking classes. I'll be honest with you, there are a ton of stats about accidents and women and men, and I'm just not going to go into it.
No.
I think we all know that accidents happen, that people get hurt, and sometimes it's worse, and I just don't feel like we should focus on it.
No, I mean, because then we could get into how accident prone some of us are than others, even when we're not on a motorcycle.
Speaking of that, how's that foot healing of yours? I think in our last episode we talked about the fact that you were hurt.
Yeah, so after that incident, I fell in the parking lot at the grocery store and hurt my back and was down for a few days. So, yeah, I'm glad it's off season. I really am glad it's off season. The foot's getting better, though. Probably should go to the doctor, but I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, should we swing by again? All right, one of the other facts that came up here is that, and again, I think the sample size here was I want to say 2,400 participants. I don't think it's big enough.
Big enough.
But here's what they came up with. Most women want their bikes to be big and new. 34% of the women preferred cruisers. Over sport bikes, and women preferred buying new 50% of the time over used. So I think they're depending on your skill, and that kind of goes back to working on your own bike also. But I think that if there's not somebody around who's mechanically inclined, which I'm not saying that men and women aren't or are not, but if there's not, I'm going to buy it new. I'm going to make sure there's a warranty on it, and I'm going to take it in when it goes bad.
Yeah.
So that's how I work my stuff.
A warranty and an extended service plan, because there is a difference.
Oh, and we should talk about that. Maybe we should mark that down as one of our conversations that we have one of these days. One of our episodes, we can talk about what those differences are, so that people
we
get
should
it.
bring a finance person in and cover some of that stuff, because there is a difference.
Yep. This was a funny one. You and I laughed a little bit about this earlier. So let me read you what they say here. According to the mixed study, and 50% of the women interviewed in a Harley-Davidson commissioned study by Kelton rate themselves extremely satisfied with their relationship, which we thought was kind of odd.
Yeah.
Because, hey, so do you ride a bike, and are you married? And, oh, by the way, are you happy in your marriage? It was kind of where that was going.
Well, of course they're going to be happy in their marriage if they ride, because when they get pissed off at their husband, they can just go get on their bike.
Right. So funny that you say that, because as I continued to read this, it said this could be because that more than half of the women surveyed in the Harley-Davidson survey said that their motorcycle is a key source of happiness.
Wind therapy.
Yep,
Yes.
totally.
Mhm.
And almost 3/4 believe that their lives have improved since they started riding.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, it gives you something to do. For my husband and I, it gives us something to do together.
Or separate.
Yeah, or separate.
Yeah.
I can get together with the girls and do it. I can do it by myself. I can get together with the guys and do it. So,
Mhm.
and I will say, just truth be told, men that were surveyed felt the same way, that it was a source of happiness. So,
I agree with that. Do you guys agree with that?
well, tons of places to comment down below.
Mhm.
So feel free to comment on anything that we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
All right. I think one of the other things that we chatted a little bit about too was the breakdown with millennials.
Oh yeah. Millennials versus baby boomers versus Gen X. So I don't know for sure which group I'm in. I think I'm an X.
Well, let's see. So I made sure I took those notes. So boomers, and again, the dates I think vary depending on what your source is here,
Mhm.
but boomers, generally speaking, 1946 to 1964, so they're around 56 to 74 years old.
Okay.
Gen Xers are 1965 to 1980, so they're 40 to 55 years old.
Yeah.
Gen Y actually has two, they break it down into two.
Mhm.
I didn't do the breakdown here, but generally speaking, they're 1981 to 1996, so they're 24 to 39 years old. And those Gen Y folks are millennials.
Oh,
So Gen Y and millennial are the same thing.
really?
And then
Okay.
Gen Z is 1997 to 2015, so they're like 8 to 23 years old.
So we're millennials. No, we're
You're-
Gen X, and our kids. Well, your kids Gen Y, and my kids are Gen X.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yep, mine's a Gen Y for sure.
Mhm.
Yep, so, okay, so that was just a point of reference for you all.
Okay.
Let's see, when we talk about ownership, so backtracking a little bit, when we talk about ownership, millennials make up 26% of, let me make sure I get this clear when I say this. When we're talking about ownership, among millennials, 26% of motorcycle owners were women, among millennials.
Millennials. Okay.
So of the millennials, 26% are women.
Mhm.
Among Gen Xers, 22% were women. So where do you fall? Interesting information.
Yeah.
Don't know what you do with it, but it's interesting nonetheless. What else you got?
Yeah. Well,
What else are we talking about?
so I
I
think that
think
leads
that's
us
it.
into women and riders. And who was your biggest influencer riding?
My biggest influence. I'm not sure if it's the women necessarily that we're going to talk about, because most of them I didn't know, because
Yeah.
I had never really done a ton of research
That's kind
about
of my
it.
point.
But
Yeah.
let's see, the woman. What woman? I don't know if I know the woman's name that was my biggest influence.
Mhm.
I was with my husband at a get-together for bikers, and I watched a number of women pull in. The big joke was, and my husband tells this story all the time, that I was on my Sportster. I thought I was the coolest because I was a woman on a Sporty. And then I saw these women pull in, and they had huge, at the time they seemed like huge bikes.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I look at, it was so cool, but it was intimidating.
Mhm.
But you could just kind of feel your heart race when they pulled in. And so I remember going up to my husband Eric and saying, honey, I think I'm going to need a bigger bike. And at the end of my very first season of riding, I got my first bike. I literally went from a Sporty to a larger bike.
So you went to your second bike after
Yeah.
the first end of the first season.
Yep. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I moved through that one pretty quickly, but I would say those women were the women that had the biggest influence.
Mhm.
They came in looking cool, and they had control of their bikes and slow speed maneuvers, which all of us need to practice
All the time.
all the time, over and over again, every year.
Mhm.
So yeah, how about you?
I really wasn't influenced by any women who rode.
Mhm.
Everyone that influenced me to ride was a male.
Huh,
And
fair enough.
so learning about all of these women and how long they had been riding and how long they've been influencing this sect of this world that we're a part of
Right.
was so fascinating to me.
Me too.
Especially as far back as it goes. Like this one woman was born in 1891.
Who's that?
Clara Wagner.
Tell us about her.
Well, Clara Wagner, who was born in 1891, folks.
1891.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Was the first documented woman motorcyclist and notable endurance rider, and she was sponsored by a company called Eclipse Machine Company, which was actually a bicycle company that had a braking system on their on their bicycle.
That's cool.
And then in 1907, at 15 years old, she became a member of FAM, which is American Federation of Motorcyclists.
Mm-hmm.
Her dad was George Wagner, who was from St. Paul, Minnesota.
St. Paul. Yay!
Yes. They owned
St. Paul
Wagner Motorcycle Company from 1901 to 1914. And they were actually, I'm reading a few notes I have over here, they were actually the first company to design a motorcycle for a woman. But they sold the company to Motorcycle Accessories Company, which I haven't been able to track, in 1914. We're guessing because of World War I. But Clara put the company's motorcycles on the map by achieving a perfect score in a FAM 360, which is a race, from Chicago to Indianapolis in 1910. She was 18 at the time, but she was denied the trophy because she didn't have a kickstand, which is kind of crappy.
Not a bike kickstand.
She was a girl.
A kickstand.
Yes, she didn't have a kickstand. So I'm getting all my information off of Wikipedia. That's where I researched all of this. So she has been celebrated as the first and most successful lady motorcyclist, and she was on a series of postcards.
Oh, that's cool.
But what was really cool about her, for me, was that she was the first documented woman motorcyclist, and that she was from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Shut the front door.
I know, right?
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
St. Paul. By the way, born and raised in St. Paul.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd let you know that. Must have rubbed off on me.
Must have, yeah. I'm a transplant.
That's okay. We'll forgive you.
Yeah. So who
Cool.
you got?
Let's see. I found a woman named Becky Brown, and I found this information on the motorcyclemuseum.org. So back in 1979, she found that she couldn't find a lot of other women to ride with, so she decided she was going to take out an ad. So she put an ad in the paper, and she got 10 responses. She started on a 125cc bike. It doesn't say anything that I could find. That didn't say what kind of a bike that one was. She bought her first bike, which was a 350cc Honda. And then she had this dream that she wanted a Harley-Davidson. So she bought a 1973 1000cc, and Molly will probably know more about this. I don't know anything about motorcycles, but some of you that do will be able to relate to this. It's an XLCH Kickstart Sportster. So thank goodness we don't have to kickstart anymore.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
I've watched my husband have to kickstart a Sportster before. It was comical. They like push it. They like get a whole bunch of guys, but I'm sure she didn't do it like this. They got a whole bunch of guys behind him to push it out of a gas station because the battery died, and he's like, and then trying to like do something with the, I don't know. Again,
I don't even know what they're trying to do.
I am not part of the 49% of women who prefer to work on their own bikes.
Exactly.
I don't know how to kickstart a bike.
She moved on to a Super Glide and then a Heritage Softail.
Heritage.
Bleep, bleep, bleep. She founded a group called Women in the Wind. Let's see.
I hear a lot about Women in the Wind.
Yeah, it's a nationwide organization. You know, it was kind of funny because one of her goals was to, I have a funny statement that she made that I'll read to you guys, but she was really about correcting the images. So I think there were people that assumed that because she was a woman and she was on a motorcycle, and I think some of us have probably felt this a little bit, that she was treated a little bit differently. And what she said to people was, we do the same thing that other women's organizations do. We have everything from baby showers to fundraisers. So I thought that was kind of cool. But what the funny statement that she made is she said, we are not tough at all. We have our own teeth. We don't cuss like truck drivers, and we're not covered with tats. So I think she said, like she was talking about all of us, I think there are some that maybe don't have their own teeth, some that cuss like truck drivers, and some that are covered with tats. More power to you. Do your thing.
I'm not covered. Someday I'll be covered.
I have a tat on my leg.
Yeah, I have quite a few of them.
So that's what I have on Becky.
On Becky.
Miss Becky.
Well, on a front say Dautheville, and I'm sure I just butchered her name.
We'll put the name down there so that you can search her.
She was very fascinating too. She grew up in Paris. She was a French journalist and a writer, and she's noted for being the first woman to ride a motorcycle solo around the world, rather. She was born in 1944. In 1972, she did the Orion Raid motorcycle tour, riding solo on a Moto Guzzi 750. I looked it up. That's what it is. From France to Isfahan, Iran.
To Iran, someplace in Iran.
And continued to Afghanistan. But in 1973, when she was just 28 years old, she rode 12,500 miles over 3 continents on a Kawasaki 125.
Wow.
Yeah. And she continued her world travels until 1981. She's done several TED Talks. She is big on women riding empowerment. She's written lots of books. And she actually supported herself while she was riding by writing, which is kind of something that I hold dear to my heart, right? Like, I enjoy those things, and, you know, I consider myself a novelist in my head. Never written a single thing, but I have lots of things in my head.
You write well, though. You are really well written.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Again, Wikipedia. And other sources, but Wikipedia was the main source for that. But yeah, so it's international. These women have been inspiring us from all over the world. So we went from 1891 to 1944, and your girl was more recent in the 70s.
Yeah, this was the 70s.
Yeah.
And then I also, did you finish with her?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have now one in 1969. So again, I was not able to find what bike she was riding either, although this was more dirt bike than it was cruiser or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman's name was Kerry Kleid, Kleid. She was the first ever to hold an AMA Pro Motocross license. And when she showed up for a race, they discovered she was a woman, and she lost her license. No kickstand. And they took her license away. And she went to court, and she won. She fought it, and she won. And then she went on to race, and she didn't win the race that she kind of fought to be in. But because of all the kind of notoriety around the court case and what have you, she got a full-page ad. So, again, kind of promoted the idea of women out there riding. Yeah, so she was kind of cool.
That is
cool. So look her up.
Yeah. Kerry who?
Kerry, with a K, Kerry, Kleid, Kleid.
Nice. Well, I'm going to do one more, I think.
I just should add here, too, that she also was added to the AMA Hall of Fame, too.
Was she?
Yeah.
Well, my last person was also added to the AMA Hall of Fame in 2000. Actually, in 2000, the AMA created the Bessie Stringfield Memorial Award to recognize outstanding achievement by a female motorcyclist. And so Bessie Stringfield was actually inducted to the Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 2002. Cool. And Bessie has a very interesting story. She was born in like 1911 or 1912, and she was the first African American woman to ride across the United States solo. She was also one of the few civilian motorcycle dispatches in the U.S. Army during World War II. She's credited with breaking down barriers for women and Jamaican American motorcyclists. But the interesting thing is she was born in North Carolina, but she later told people she was born in Jamaica because she was trying to escape some things from her past, which is interesting to me. I dive into all these different things about why people do what they do and bring light to those things. But she So yeah, she's one of the more notable writers. I mean, with World War II and the different things that she accomplished in her life.
Yeah. And being a woman for one, and then being a woman of color on top of it.
Right.
Yikes. I mean,
And
she had
being
it stacked against her.
The first African American to ride across the United States by herself. She kept writing right up to the time of her death, which she died in, I think, 93. Yeah, 93. But she is very similar to Gloria Strunk, in my mind, who is also, from what I understand, still writing. And she's like about to celebrate her 100th birthday.
Yeah.
So
that's
amazing
awesome.
Women that have just created so much opportunity for us.
I just want to make it to next week.
I know, me too. Like,
That's funny.
So that's Bessie Stringfield.
Bessie. So again, pictures that I think probably a lot of us have seen because she's been advertised quite a bit also, but we'll put some pictures up and more links. And last lady on my list is Dot. We like to call her Dot.
Dot, yes.
Dorothy Robinson. Let's see. Her family moved to the United States here in 1918. They settled in Saginaw, Michigan. I think there's a song about Saginaw, Michigan. There is. And then later on, she moved over to Detroit with her family. And her family ran a motorcycle dealership.
Nice.
So that was her first exposure. She logged her first 100-mile endurance race and win in 1930. 6 years later, she was the first woman to compete in Michigan's 500-mile Jack Pine motorcycle run. So that's kind of cool. According to the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame, there were organized, not just attempts, but organized attempts. So people were really bothered by the fact that she was racing and they didn't want her in. So there were organized attempts to keep her out of racing in the 30s and 40s. But she did not give up. And she went on to start, she was the co-founder of the Motormaids.
I know we've all heard about the Motormaids.
Yeah.
If you're a female rider, you've heard about the Motormaids.
And if you haven't, you should look them up.
Yeah,
they're
it's
very cool.
impressive.
Yeah. Let's see, the first woman, the Motormaids is the first women's motorcycle group and America's oldest existing women's club. Credited with opening the door to the sport and future generations of women. Cool stuff.
Yeah. That's
all right.
Awesome stuff. So those are women you may not have heard of. And there were so many women as we were going through this. Like literally before we started recording, I had pages of like names that I wanted to go. Like I was like, how are we going to pick which ones we talk about? And one of the things that I forgot to mention about Bessie Stringfield was that she was actually self-taught. When she was 16, she taught herself how to ride on a 1928 Indian Scout.
That's great.
Which was a fun fact that I meant to say earlier. But there were so many women like Faye Taylor and Mary McGee and Vivian Bales, who was a cover girl for HD Enthusiast, and she toured the country on her Harley in 1929.
Tons.
29. Yeah.
I know one of the articles that I was reading, I forget who the woman was, but there were actually at one point she had to put her bike into a
boat.
No, into a
Lois Parker, wasn't that her name?
Can't remember, but she had to put her bike into a train, and then she got on the train with her bike, and then she was with her. They sent a bunch of servicemen from that country in there as well, and she fought off a number of them and spent plenty of time hiding or kind of protecting herself with her motorcycle on these trains. So some of them have been through some BS.
Well, I think she was the one that actually rode her bike. I might have the name wrong, but she rode her bike from Alaska all the way to Argentina.
Yes.
There's one road that goes all the way, like from top to bottom there. And she did it by herself.
Yeah, that's exactly
and that
the
was
one
in
I'm
the
talking
70s,
about.
Wasn't it?
Yep, it was.
So, I mean, how far we've come in the 70s that even as a female, because she ran into some issues whenever she was making that ride as a female by herself.
Yep.
So yeah, read all of this stuff, like research it, and we'll throw some names down there of some other women too.
Yeah, maybe a few credits of all the ones that we came up with, and then if you guys know others that we're missing, like we're not trying to be all inclusive by any means, and I'm not sure that we could because there are a lot more women than we even realize that had influences. in us being able to ride now and promoting it and what have you. So if there are other women that you would like to tell us about or that you think are great role models, put them in the list.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of current women, like the late great Jessie Combs, who she had a need for speed, and she chased it, and good for her for doing what she loved to do. So
well, and I would even say modern day too, right? I mean, there are women that I've ridden with that as I talked about those women that I ran into that made me want to get a larger bike and kind of made me excited about riding. But every year I run into more and more women just in the riding circles that we all run in that I'm like, oh man, she's got great skills. I'd like to be like her. I'd like to ride like her. I'd like to improve my skills like her. Things that you learn from each other.
Well, you were
all
one of
the
those
time.
women for me.
Oh,
and whenever I was in Oklahoma, before I came up here, I rode with a lot of the women with Ladies of Harley, because I ride a Harley, and through the Hog chapter there was there's always usually a little off chapter for the women who ride, or some of them don't even ride. I'm squirreling, I do that. Squirrel. But Mary and Sue were two of the women that I rode with, and I did not want to go to this Ladies of Harley meeting. I was nervous about meeting new people. I know you probably don't believe that, but I was intimidated because I just started riding, and my husband was like, he works at Harley, so he's around bikes all the time, and he would come home from work on Saturday, and I'd be like, do you want to go ride? And he's like, I've been around motorcycles all day, and he gets off work at 7, and he's like, no, I don't want to ride. I'm like, can we go ride tomorrow? Sunday is his day off. You really need to find some women to ride with. Bless him. I mean, no, don't get me wrong, he was the biggest encourager and just encouraged me to learn how to ride, and was always standing behind me, and you need to learn to do this if that's what you want to do. But he was like, you really need to learn or meet some women that will be patient with you and help you. So I went to this meeting, and Mary introduced herself to me right away, and then Sue was her friend, and so we spent a lot of time riding that summer.
That's
and
awesome.
They encouraged me, they mentored me, and if it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't have stuck with it, because I didn't know other women that rode.
Right.
And I don't know why I got off on that, but
we were talking about modern day people who influence us.
So Mary and Sue.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and if you don't have women that ride in your area, we're blessed to have each other, and then tons of women that we know, because we're starting to kind of build this strong group of women that ride. Again, we don't care what brand, they just ride. And we have just it's growing by leaps and bounds every time we turn around. But if you don't have people to ride, make an effort to reach out to other women that do. Find women's riding groups in your area, and then reach out to them, and make it a point to get out there and meet those folks, because it does make a huge difference.
And now is a great time to do that. Even on social medias, if you find women who ride in your area, and if you need help doing that, I'm more than happy to help you. Reach out to me on Facebook or through the Smith and Waker Facebook, and I'll be happy to try to help find some women in your area that ride. I know lots of people.
If it's out there, she can find it.
And start meeting with them now.
Yeah.
And getting to know them now, and talking about it, and planning it, and just be ready for the season, because it's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, and I know, one of the things that I did just in my local area here was I just created my own Facebook page. Like, I just wanted to have a place for all of us to collaborate, and then it grew and it grew and it grew. So, so if you can't find something, which I'm going to doubt that you can't, because I think there's something out there every place.
Yeah.
But if for some odd reason you can't, or you feel froggy about starting your own Facebook page, feel froggy, jump.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I did want to share some fun facts with you about some famous celebrity women who ride that you may not know about, and what they ride, because if you're kind of on the fence and you're watching this and you're like, I really want to learn to ride, and I don't know if I can, if we're not enough of a look at us, we're doing it, you can do it. Maybe Alanis Morissette.
Ooh.
Who rides a Ducati Monster would inspire you, or Miranda Kerr, who is a Victoria's Secret model who rides a Honda Superhawk, or Queen Latifah, who rode a Honda CBR. Marissa Miller is a supermodel and a Sports Illustrated model. She actually was the first to my knowledge, spokeswoman for Harley-Davidson, and she helped launch the V-Rod and rides a Nightster.
Wow.
The wife of Thor. We all know him. Christopher Hemsworth. Elsa Pataky. She rides on a private track. She rides a Ducati. Pink, of course, rides. Michelle Rodriguez. And one of my favorites, Catherine Bell, who is on the Good Witch. She's ridden since she was 17. She once had 9 bikes. She was on Jag and the Good Witch. She had 9 bikes. She's turned it down to 3. God bless her.
Why did she do that?
Because she's a mom and she felt like she needed to,
She needed to tame it down a little.
Yeah. Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, rides a 2006 Ducati.
That's so cool.
And the list goes on. Jewel, who will save your soul? She rides BMX dirt bikes.
Who sings that?
Jewel, shut up.
Let her sing it.
Kate Hudson rides dirt bikes. She has a Harley 883, a Triumph. Julian Michaels, the fitness person.
Jillian, yeah.
Yeah. V-Rod and a Yamaha. It goes on. Olivia Munn. Tina Turner's favorite bike, an HD Electric Glide. Cher rode a Road King.
Crazy.
Winona Judd. And Margaret.
Margaret. Oh, I've seen a picture of Anne Margaret's bike.
I didn't know this. Elizabeth Taylor rode an 88 Harley-Davidson HD Hugger that she called Purple Passion.
I wonder which husband gave that to her.
I don't even know how many she had.
Too many.
But on that note, Purple Passion, this is Minnesota.
Yes, it is. Yep, it is.
So,
that's very cool.
Yeah.
So again, if you guys have know of other celebrities or other notable folks in your area that we would recognize the names, put them in the comments down below. It'll be interesting to see those. And I would, at some point, when we do things like International Female Ride Day, I'd like to reach out to see if we can get somebody to come.
That would be freaking awesome.
That would be really fun.
Yeah.
Especially if she showed up on her bike.
Exactly. There's a couple of Battlestar Galactica women that ride that do like cross-country trips.
Yeah.
Trisha Helfler, who you may recognize also from Lucifer. She played Lucifer's mom. She's ridden a Dyna Lowrider, a Wide Glide, a Sportster, and she's now on a Rocky C, which I'm not sure what that is. Her and Katie Sackhoff, who's also on Battlestar Galactica, which I haven't watched. No, I'll just admit that. She created a KT600 bike based on the Honda XL600R Enduro.
Cool.
A woman created a bike, and she's ridden it across the country. So, it's
awesome.
Also fascinating to me.
It is. It is.
So, thank you for spending the last 45 minutes with us.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. We appreciate all the followers and all the
words
of encouragement. This has just been, it's been a dream come true doing this.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. And
couldn't ask for a better partner.
I know, you're going to make me cry. Stop it.
She's such a crier.
I am. I'm so sentimental.
Hey, I just needed to add something to your list here.
Yes.
I'll be honest. I'm not very good with celebrities. I'm not one of those people who knows all the names. So you're saying those, and there are a few things that I recognized, and I kept acknowledging you. But we have this is just a little side comment that my sister will say, hey, what's the name of that? Who are you? Or I'd bring up some movie, and she'll say, well, what's the person's name? And I'm like, I don't know. He's that one guy in that one show that did that one thing. And she's like, really?
They put the dilly in the dilly?
Yeah. So as you're reading this and going through all of these, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, don't know who that is.
Don't know who that is. And that's fine. A lot of those names.
Some of them I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so there's a little bit for everybody in there, which is kind of the fun of all of this.
Right.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were bringing us home, I think.
Yeah. So, on our next episode, I'm pretty excited about this, actually.
Yeah. This will be a good one.
We're going to discuss what we women can do to empower each other now that we've talked about women and that have kind of paved the way for us. What can we do as women to empower and encourage each other? And not just in motorcycle riding. I mean, it bleeds into other areas of life,
Of
and
course.
how we can start just to stop with the negativity, like,
I was going to say, and what we can stop doing too, that helps encourage people.
yeah.
You know, I think, we've talked a ton about Facebook pages that we both belong to, and I am constantly surprised.
Well,
I don't know if it's even a surprise anymore. It's just, it's kind of sad that sometimes we get in our own way.
Yeah,
And so-
I am surprised, honestly, that there are still so many people out there, so many women who are riders that are still hung up on things like the definition of a real biker.
Right.
Can we just not?
Well,
Can we not?
and then the whole judgment about what you wear,
Yeah,
what you don't wear. It, turns out, if you're listening to us and you live here in the United States, in most cases, you get to make whatever choice you want to make.
Yeah. And,
What do I want my friends and women that I ride with to be safe? Of course, but that still ends up being your choice, and that choice varies from state to state here in the United States.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll talk about, we'll define what a real biker is, to us anyway, and how broad that definition is, and how many different words and phrases there are for. My most recent one that I found is motorcychologist.
that was a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
a good
awesome.
one. So, anyway, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah.
Again, I'm Molly,
And I'm Monica,
and we'll see you next time.
And we're out.
Smith
Thank
and
you.
Waker. Thanks.